The coronavirus. Prime Minister Scott Morrison was right the first time, a year ago now.
We can't keep Australia under the doona. We need to be able to move ahead.
But how things have changed. Now the Prime Minister does want Australia to stay under the doona. He's not making the slightest move, at least publicly, towards opening the borders as soon as we get the vulnerable vaccinated. I mean, the elderly are overwhelmingly the most likely to die.
It's not safe to take those next steps right now. It's not. But we'll keep working on what those next steps are. I've talked about those next steps.
So what's changed? Well, for one thing, the Prime Minister has seen that voters love leaders who spread fear and then hit them with the harshest shutdown. Morrison reads polls like the News poll today that showed 3/4 of voters wanted Australia's borders kept closed until at least the middle of next year, more than a year from now, which, funnily enough, is what the Morrison government has planned as well. It's like you can read polls, which is what the New South Wales Treasurer today was arcing up about. He says that's not the same as leadership.
Well, it's the role of political leaders not to be, following the polling or looking at what focus groups are saying. The job is to lead.
But it's not so surprising that Australians are so terrified of the virus, not when the Morrison government's medical advisors scared them stupid last year with wild predictions that at least 50,000 of us, even 150,000 of us, would die from this virus. In fact, the real death toll fewer than 1,000. And most of those dead were over 80, almost all were over 60, most ill or frail. These are people we could have better protected and can now, particularly in nursing homes. In fact, now we have mostly protected them with a vaccination program that is focused on precisely them. So now the same medical advisors who helped to spread fear the first time are saying, well, the government should plan to start opening our borders from early next year. Here is the former Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Nick Coatsworth.
It's going to be a false idol in 2022, 2023, when the pandemic is still raging around the world, and yet the majority of our population is vaccinated.
Now, Coatsworth is right. We do need to change our thinking, you see. We need to say, what is in fact our real objective here? Is it really to stop anyone at all from getting infected? Or is it to stop people actually dying from that infection, which is something the vaccine basically protects us from? So do we really need to keep shutting off Australia merely because when travellers come back, they might have a virus that kills nobody at all, but might make some people get the sniffles? Now, even Brett Sutton, the Chief Medical Officer of Hardcore Victoria, is now saying the same, that we will have to learn to accept some infections without freaking when the borders open. He said, we've driven transmission to zero, but we will face newly emerging transmission at a critical juncture where we need to make a call on letting it run. Now, if you think that is heartless, as I was told last year when I suggested this sort of approach, this is exactly the trade-off we have made for decades with the flu. The flu every year kills 1,000, 2,000, even 4,000 Australians. Yet never did we say, shut the borders. As I've said before, maybe we should have taken more care. And we will, sure, in the future, I think, because thanks to these coronavirus restrictions now, just 37 Australians died last year from the flu. But does protecting the few people you can more easily identify and protect, does protecting those few really mean restricting the right of 25 million Australians to travel overseas again, when vaccinations will make the risk of dying so very small? Britain today eased its own travel ban. People can now travel again to 12 countries, safer countries, including Australia, provided, of course, we let them in. Now, to get to that same point here, opening the borders slowly, carefully, after we've vaccinated the vulnerable, we need our leaders to start planning now and preparing the public for this change. Convince them that Yes, there is a risk, but it is a small one, a worthwhile one, one that we can manage and we should manage. The Prime Minister today missed that chance to start talking what he's going to be doing to be able to open our borders. Where, may I ask, by the way, is the proper new quarantine system we will probably need as backup? But here's my worry. The next federal election. It's actually likely this year or early next. Does anyone really think this very poll-focused Prime Minister will dare to open the borders before then?